Hello, and welcome to Your Creative and Magical Life, which is hopefully your actual life, but is also this podcast, a show that explores how tarot, divination, and spirituality can help us live a life that sparkles with magic and creativity. I'm your host, Cecily Saylor. Let's make some magic. Hello, everyone who's listening out there. Welcome to episode 13. We are exploring in this episode the Hermit card, which is number 9 in the major arcana. And I'm very excited to be talking about the Hermit with my friend who is a poet and writer, Chad Hutchinson, who I haven't seen in a good long while. So it's really nice to connect again for the podcast. Chad lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, on a cozy little block in the town where he grew up. And he has worked, and still works as a social worker on and off, and has spent the last few years really focusing on his writing and has kind of transformed and evolved himself into like a poet, philosopher, sort of sage type. And he writes a lot about encounters in his backyard, memories with friends, cars, sexy women, being at live music festivals, and also some of his experiences growing up in the 80s and 90s. Chad shares his work under the pseudonym Future Man, which I love, on a Substack newsletter called Transmissions from the Future, which I helped him start. He's excellent at making playlists, and I'm sure back in the day he was very good at making mixtapes. And his creative journey really, from my understanding as his friend, really includes an important hermit phase. So that's why I wanted to bring him on the show. That's part of the reason why for this episode in particular, and kind of share that with y'all who are listening. So hi, Chad. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Hey, Cecily. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. That was fantastic. I'm great. How are you? Great to see you.
Yes, great to see you. I'm glad you're good. I'm going to ask you not to shake around too much because your
Oh,
microphone is on your computer. So it's going to make
gotcha.
extra noise. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Before we get into your story, I thought we would set the stage and look at the Hermit card together. So I'm holding up the Hermit card for you.
Okay.
And yeah, let's just talk about what you see. What's here in the card?
That light, really. My eyes went straight to that. He's kind of like this wizard looking character with a staff. Kind of looks like he's up on a mountain, maybe. And perhaps it's dark, but he has this light and it's kind of lighting up the whole card, sort of. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he's holding this lantern and he's wearing like dark blue, dark gray robes with a hood and kind of like a shrouded, yeah, like a wizard without the stars and the moons all over it. He's got a long beard, sort of like yourself. And yeah, it is nighttime and he's standing at the top of an icy mountain. And so I'm going to show you one other version. This one is from the Fifth Spirit Tarot. And the one that we're first talking about is from the Rider Waite deck. And this is from the Fifth Spirit Tarot. And you can see some similarities, but what do you notice
Hmm.
here? Anything?
Hanging, is that there's still a lantern, I guess. It's not shining as bright, but it almost looks like it's hovering in front of him there. He's kind of looks like an old sort of cowboy or maybe a Native American with a backpack and a thermos. It's fantastic. He looks like he'd maybe be some sort of hitchhiker, hobo traveler somewhere, in all the best ways.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of fascinated by that kind of thing, and I really love this. And he has a staff too. It looks like the other wizard guy had a staff that was almost as tall as he was, And
Yes.
this guy's sitting on something, a rock or a log,
Yeah.
um, also in the snow, I think,
Yes.
with a cane or a staff kind of leaning up against him. Not quite as long as the other one, but it's fantastic. He's in the woods, I guess. There's trees. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Wintertime, he's got some patches on his jeans and his shirt, maybe like a bandana around his neck, and he's sitting there with that lantern hovering over his hands, um, kind of gazing at it. And the same with this hermit, they're both looking into the light. And I guess I'm curious what comes up for you when we talk about this card, or how do you we'll talk more about what it means and what it suggests, but I'm curious if there are any connections you're making with it personally so far.
A billion.
Okay.
Um, I mean, the first one, I guess, is just like this sense of quiet and solitude. And in doing so, then they're really focused on trying to find the light. I mean, that's that's what it is, I think. I mean, that's what happened for me. I guess we'll talk about that later. Probably why I'm the guest on this episode, maybe. But um,
Yeah, why don't we
yeah,
go there? Why don't you talk about like what the story or the memory or the phase you went through that this card reminds you of, and maybe we'll come back to the card a little bit more.
I'm sure. I guess my whole entire adult life, from we'll say 19 up until the pandemic started, I spent on the run. Just I tried to never be home because home is where the darkness would come in. I have a good time. I have a lot of fun, but there's always been some sort of darkness inside my brain that I was terrified of. Um, and so I just tried to not be home because that's when it would come in. And about 7 years ago, I sort of just kind of lost the hold of it and was suicidal for a moment, which is a longer story, but I fortunately um, was able to realize that um, sometimes my brain was telling me things that weren't true. My whole life, I just believed what my brain told me about things. And I was like, wait, I mean, maybe other people know that, but I was, I was in my 40s when I found out that I couldn't trust my brain all of the time. And so about
Mhm.
7 years ago, I really tried to start being purposeful about taking control of my brain instead of it controlling me. Um, but I kind of stuck to the same lifestyle, keep going out, keep never be home. But I was more purposeful about stuff. And then the pandemic came. And I mean, I was terrified of what that would mean to be by myself, but I'm also resilient. And so I really just hit it head on. I tried to be focused. I got some books and I said, for the first time in my life, I'm going to take a blanket out in my backyard and sit on it. I've never done that. I had never done that. And I tried it, and there was this little cat that came around in the early days of the pandemic. And I'm sort of allergic to cats, and he wanted to hang out all day. And so I didn't want him in my house because I'd sneeze. So we would just hang out outside. And suddenly it just turned into this thing where I was noticing this sense of peace and calm coming over my body that I hadn't felt since I was a kid. And, as long story, not as long, um, I realized for the first time in my life that I'm an introvert. 52% introvert, 48%. And so all this time that I was just on the run, I was just exhausted. I didn't have the mental power to solve what my darkness was and how to, combat that. And so I just really started focusing on this I'd always heard extrovert, introvert means where does your energy come from? And I did not know what that meant until forced to kind of stay at home. And then I started just sitting outside every day. And I was like, I feel my energy coming back in a way that I never had before. And once that starts, then I was able to work more on my brain and work more on all of the things. And that's what that light kind of uh, reminded me of in those cards, this quiet time. And, what are you choosing to do? You're choosing to try to find what this light is and what it means. Oh, I feel like that's what I've been doing now since I started sitting in the yard, and I still do. I mean, I've probably missed, 10 sunsets in the last 4 years. I mean, if I was at a movie or something, but if I'm home, I'm out in the yard watching the sunset. And I don't live in Key West. It's not a sun that blows up the sky every night, but there's just something about that calmness of just sitting and watching the sky change colors, even if it's just a subtle, but from day to night, every day. I just, that.
I love it. I wish we all had that kind of record. It's like you try, I need to try to like exercise for 30 days or meditate. I mean, I think looking at a sunset is like a meditation, but I think that's something to be proud of. And maybe something for all of us to aspire to. And in that process, there was like a creative mm, bubbling, effervescence, outpouring. I don't know, right? Like,
Yes, absolutely. My brain was just feeling really active, I guess, because I had all this extra energy. And I've always tried to, make witty posts on Facebook, or if someone I love dies, I try to write something nice to capture it. And people are always like, you should be a writer. You should be a writer. Well, that sounds nice, but how do you do such a thing? I I don't know. Um, but I could feel that I was wanting to try to put words together in a different way than I had of just a Facebook post. And again, this cat had started coming around, and I had never been a cat person. And we instantly became like best friends. And we hung out, it's the early days of the pandemic. Everyone is isolated and alone. And all day, every day, I'm hanging out with this cat. And so I wanted to try to find a way to tell the story of him to people that I wasn't seeing. Because, normally I tell stories, at a bar to someone, and I'm not seeing them. And I wanted to share about this cat without, it just didn't fit. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I discovered Richard Brodigan. I was watching a live stream, Kevin Morby live stream, and he read the Brodigan poem, I Was Trying to Describe You to Someone. And it lit my brain on fire in a way that it's still on fire. And I literally like didn't know that you could write that way. I didn't know that was legal. And I was
mhm.
like, okay, this is it. And once I understood that that's legal, I was like, I could do this. And within a couple of days, I was able to put the piece about the cat into something, which was the first like real thing I've written since, creative writing in college. And I knew it. I knew it the second I got done with it, that it was what I wanted it to be. I could see in my head what I wanted it to look like, and there it was. And I was like, ooh, and it felt good. And I put it up, and lots of people whose opinions I really respect, they were like, "You're a writer, like you need to continue." And so I just kept kind of doing it. And some people, one of my best friends and Cecily, said that I kind of needed to take proprietary nature of my work instead of just putting it up on Facebook, make it something. And once again, I'm like, oh, great, but how do you do that? And you helped me set up this Substack, and now it's been 3 years going on. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's been really awesome to watch. And, I saw you, I guess the last time I saw you in person, I think was like 2021 or something. So a year
Yes.
after the pandemic. So you had started your backyard uh constitutionals, I guess, even though
Lifestyle.
yes, your backyard lifestyle. And you were starting to like pay attention to birds as well, which I'm very
Oh, yeah.
interested in. And yeah, you were telling me that now you were writing, and I had seen some of that on Facebook, and I knew I could figure out how to get you on Substack. And you like, it's just so nice that you stayed with it for like 3 years, and it's just been growing and developing, and we'll talk more about like that journey. But I wanna come back to kind of the hermit moment and connect to the card a little bit, and one of the for our listeners, and one of the, I pulled a couple quotes from different writers on the tarot, and this one comes from the book called Red Tarot by Christopher Marmolejo, which just recently came out. And the second word in this quote is sunset, so that's magic. But he writes, after sunset, and this is specifically about the Hermit card. After sunset, our looking is done differently. We see not what is before us, instead, we sense. This darkness is the night of illumination. Fear comes, as does doubt, illusion, delusion. But in this darkness, we make a fire. We pray, we make love, we dream, we wade into the waters of renewal. We breathe softer, harder, hushed. This is the night of our truth, where love is ever present but unseen by standard faculties. This is the hermit's darkness, and it is contemplative. In the midst of this night shines a North Star with the power and perspective to shift the narrative center of our soul's telling. This is beyond the darkness of dissolution, the mourning into darkness. The hermit's darkness holds the inestimable blessing of knowing, divine relationship, finding the right direction in the blackness of the unexpected.
Holy cow, I can't wait to go back when this comes out and listen to that again. Whoa, I was deep into that.
Yeah, and yeah, some nice hermit poetry to kind of reflect into your story. But what the hermit is doing is pulling away from the world. And the light, the lantern represents the unconscious that gets to like come online, or, come become illuminated, because we live in a world that's like constantly wanting us to move from our conscious mind, from our ego, from like rational thought, and kind of follow all the scripts of success, or what we're kind of fed as like the stories that, I guess, the pathways that are going to lead us to happiness. And but there's this truth that's inside of us, and there's all of this unconscious material from maybe past lifetimes, but also like, growing up, and the dreams we hold, and memories, and pains, and sorrows, and all of that. And I think that kind of relates to some of the darkness you were running from. But then when you had to sit with it, you realize like some of the dark stuff is just made up. And also packed in with all that dark stuff is a lot of beautiful stuff, and like wisdom and truth and insight that can guide you, and has been guiding you in terms of like how you live your life now.
100%. I mean, truth is kind of what I've tried to be all about, and positivity and purposefulness. But just things that are true. I've always been into that, and now more than ever is just trying to figure that out. And so, yeah, once things slowed down, I was able to figure out some things that had sort of secretly haunted me, like they were kind of tucked back in my head. And some of it, I purposely went about trying to discover that. I'm like, why does this thing feel like this? I understand now that it shouldn't. what is making me feel like this in this situation, And I would just focus on being quiet. We're talking a little bit about more that hermit. I started in the pandemic. Every Sunday, I would turn off my ringer for the whole day on my phone because I had live streams. Like Sunday was this magical day of live streams. I had like 6
And
live streams.
these are music live streams. We're gonna get
Music
into
live streams.
your live music addiction shortly.
Yes. So I had these 6 musical live streams for a year and a half of the pandemic. And so I didn't want to be disturbed. I turned my phone off and I just watched them. And then I expanded it. Then I was like, let me also turn it off half a day Monday. And now, I don't know how many, 2 years now, I haven't turned my ringer on. My ringer's
Mm.
not on my phone. It drives some people crazy because sometimes you just can't get a hold of me. I mean, I check it. I check it to see if there's a message, and I'm always still on social media too much. But never watching viral videos. Hate those things, unless there's puppies. But to get into the darkness, sorry, got sidetracked there. It was interesting and it's only in the last maybe year that I'm not scared of it anymore, which is outrageous. Once every 10 days, probably it's going to be for my whole life. I'm just going to wake up and my brain isn't working that day. That's how it always is. And it used to terrify me because I didn't understand why it would do that. And then I would spiral. These days, once every 10 days, I'll be on the best run. Everything will be great. Life is grand. There's not a reason in the world. And I'll wake up and my brain will say, it's probably not worth it anymore. Like you've given it a good run, that's probably it. And I can't make it not say that, but I can stop listening to it. And so like I make myself get up. I take a walk every morning now. Like last probably year and a half, I'd never been a person that walked just for fun. And I've started it. I take a 1.5 mile loop around the neighborhood every morning. And there's so many people that just kind of know me as that person walking with his headphones and his green pants on, and I wave at them. And it's just this lovely ritual. And it's just enough to keep me from getting stuck in a darkness cycle. And so I tell myself, okay, here it is, it's darkness. But if I just go about my day and I'm not going to feel great. I'm going to feel like shit all day long. But I just know that. I just let it be. And most times, if I let it be, the next day it's better. And I'm like, cool. Sometimes it's not, but it hardly ever goes more than 48 hours. And that the secret, I feel like for me, was just knowing not to be terrified of it anymore, that it's just going to come up no matter what I do. And I can try to do things to make it less severe, like walks, like sitting outside, trying to be purposeful. But something happens in my brain. It just does it once every 10 days. And I'll give it 48 hours. And if I get sort of tired of it after that, I've figured out how to just blast it away and make it disappear. It's hard, but I know how to do it.
And it seems like the darkness is this sort of like nihilism or like what's the point sort of thing, or this just like fixation on suffering or something. Like
Um,
what do you understand about it now?
I still don't know exactly what it is. I mean, I think I'm one of those people that has that thing inside them, that I'm a Leo for one. I never used to pay attention to that, but every time I meet some people that do pay attention to those things, they're like, "Oh, of course you are."
Yes,
You
you're
know, I
very
want to
very Leo.
I want to roar and be alive, and if I can't feel like that, then what's the point? Uh, that's the
Ah,
thing. And so I love a good quiet time. That makes me feel alive now too. Like it that drives my brain in a good way, but that feeling of being alive and the times when I'm really alive is often when I'm roaring. And, is there an expiration date on that? If future man person. Um, and so these days, it's sort of my brain just tries to tell me that. Like it just shuts down. It's shut down once every 10 days. And it'll just tell me different things, but the overall message always is that it's no longer worth it. This thing, like this quest that I'm living of seeking truth and fun and things that are right and a sense of calm. And I feel like I'm getting closer than I ever have before. Life is wonderful. And yet tomorrow I might wake up. Today I woke up and my brain was a little like that. And I was like, oh, I've agreed to do a podcast today. I just put on my secret power music, New York Groove by Ace Frehley, and crank it up and put on my sunglasses. You can't see me, but I'm wearing my emotional support sunglasses. They're yellow tinted, and they make me feel more calm, and also they look cool. But you can't see it, but Cecily can.
They're the
You have
color
cool
of the
you have cool glasses
lantern.
on too. Oh
Thank you.
shoot, they are.
Yeah.
They really are. Huh, neat.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think what you said about allowing it to happen is really important. Like you were running away from it's like before the pandemic, you were always on the run, you said, to sort of avoid feeling or sitting with that feeling, that dark feeling for very long. And now you've stopped running from it and you just know it's there and it's going to come. And maybe sometimes it needs to come and you don't have to like escape it. You can sort of know that yeah, it's here now, but it's going to pass. And I think that's something that the hermit ends up doing is this kind of allowing. And the hermit's moving, but kind of it seems very slowly. Like they have this walking stick or this staff, which is also connected to the wand we see in the magician card. So there's something magical about it, but it's also like functional for his movement, perhaps. So the hermit's moving, but moving slowly and moving on his own, moving at his own pace. And surrounded by darkness, just like in the darkness, but still connected to something bright, something luminous. And that's what he's focused on. And it's kind of like you figured out the way most of the time to turn your attention to something luminous. You put on literal yellow glasses to like make
Yes,
everything look like the lantern, which is very smart.
yes.
Very interesting. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's really important.
And looking at it now too, for me, what I see is with that darkness, it's always going to be so much darkness out there. Like, not just the darkness in my brain, like, it's dark out there. It is dark. But you can choose what you look at. You can, and I've kind of always done that since I was a kid, like if I don't know how a story ends, I'm just going to hope that it's happy until proven otherwise. And I just, this is my favorite time of year. It's hummingbird season, Cecily. The hummingbirds showed up on Sunday. So
Excellent.
for the next like 2 or 3 months, this is my time where I recharge enough to get me through the whole year. I just sit and watch them. And it's like you could sit inside and watch TV. How is that going to illuminate anything? Or you can sit outside and watch the hummingbirds all day, and there'll probably be some cool clouds and other things. I don't know. I'm always trying to look for something that's bright, and sometimes I get distracted by things that are sparkly and shiny. But who cares? So what? I got distracted in a fun way and chased something sparkly and shiny and realized that I hadn't looked at the news in 2 weeks. Cool, 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 cool. So I feel like that's what that lantern is also kind of doing. Everything around him is dark. At first, when I looked at it, I thought he was trying to look into the light for some wisdom, and I think he probably is. But also, what if he's like, this is just what I'm looking at? I'm going to choose to look at what's light. I, I don't care that there's darkness all around me. The other guy up in the woods, he's like, I'm up here. I'm tired. I'm tired. I need to sit down. But he's still having a good time looking at his light. You know, he looks like he's happy. I like it.
Yeah, and the thing with the hermit, or one thing that's said about the hermit is that the light comes from the hermit himself. Like he generates, it's his wisdom that he cultivates. That's what keeps the light burning. And that kind of brings me back to truth. And I guess I'm wondering how do you know now when something feels true? Or like, what does the truth mean to you? Or like, what kind of truth are you trying to advance, I guess? Any of those questions that feel
Any of
like you can pick them
the.
up.
um, well, I mean, certain things that are truth, there's factual, and you just have to know more about it. But more, I'm just, I don't know. It gets blurred with I'm always on a search for authenticity. It's not exactly the same as truth, but it's close. Um, and a lot of that, you feel it if you've spent your whole life doing that, I guess. You know, like I've always done that. Um, just trying to find out something that's real. Um, I I remember when I was a kid, I was like 4 or 5, and the mall opened, like the mall in town. And it was this huge to do. Radio stations, the TV reporters are out there, free hot dogs. I'm sure that's why we went, free hot dogs and soda. And we walked through the mall, and it's just, I'd never been in a mall, like 5 years old, and it's fantastic. And there's a car in there, like some fancy car. How do you get a car in the mall? And then out in front of, I don't know if it was J.C. Penney's or Leggett's, and probably Leggett's, they had all these mannequins, but mixed in with the mannequins were real models who were pretending to be mannequins. And I'm like 4 or 5 walking, looking at them, and I'm like, oh, we have to figure out which one's real and which one's not. And so, like, my daddy's wandering around. I'm just stopping, looking at each one. I'm like, mannequin, yes. And I get to this one, and I'm looking, and I'm staring, and I'm watching her hands. I'm looking at her face, and my dad realizes I'm not with him and comes back, and I'm like, this one's not real, Dad. You can tell by her fingernail polish. And she smiled, you're not supposed to because she's pretending she's a mannequin. But she smiled, and I looked up at her, but it's like the one to me that wasn't real was the one that was a human being because she was trying to pretend she was a mannequin. Ugh.
So you've been
That's
on
how
the
that's how
lookout.
I've always been. Like, I've just tried to understand what things are. And I'm like, okay, so this is this, always just trying to search for something that's true, which gets maddening with my music obsession.
Hmm.
Um, just I can't tell what's true in like rock and roll, maybe alternative rock, but singer songwriter, Americana stuff is kind of starting to like make my brain explode with this new sort of resurgence in popularity of like Americana music. Huh. Who can tell what's real anymore? You used to know, like, if someone like Townes Van Zandt or John Prine, you knew what that meant. You didn't need to know anything else about them, really. That's a good enough starting point that these people understand things that are true. But now, who knows? If somebody likes, I love Sturgill Simpson, but it doesn't quite mean the same thing. Like, if someone says, I like Sturgill Simpson, they might also like insert name of country music singer who's terrible, but people love. I try to be positive. But you might like Sturgill Simpson, and you might like, I don't know, Georgia Florida line or something like that. I don't know what that really means. But um
So you're saying like, yeah, like mm, there's a zone of music that feels like sort of original, and the people performing it and writing it and singing it are coming from the heart. And then now you feel like there's this new, sort of like a retro animation of that original stuff. Like people like the aesthetic, but they're not necessarily creating what's genuine for them. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it's a little bit like a AI version
Oh,
of.
okay.
It's like, oh, this is what Americana is. We'll make it sound like this, and we'll do this, and maybe there's some bits of wisdom in some of that stuff too. I don't know, but some of it, and it's frustrating. There's a couple singers out there, and I know it's not. I know it's not authentic, and everybody loves it except my friend Phil. He and I both saw it once, and we both knew it. We both saw it, and he's the only one I can ever talk to about this guy who's kind of big now. Because other people are like, "Ooh," they're like, "You must like him because he's like Waylon Jennings, and he's like Drive By Truckers." And I'm like, "No, he's not. No, he's not." I was like, "I've seen it, and it's not. It's fake." I was like, "It's fake."
So it
Eh.
is, I mean, I think that comes back to like the felt sense of truth. Like it isn't a rational uh evaluation. It's a sensory, like whole body kind of soul evaluation, which
Yes.
is something I think the hermit is learning how to do. This is interesting. Okay, now there's another quote I'm going to read you. This one comes from Alejandro Jodorowsky, who wrote this book, The Way of the Tarot, and who's also a surrealist and filmmaker. And he says the hermit actively terminates his relationship with the old world and becomes receptive toward an unknown future over which he exercises no mastery. The hermit represents the highest form of wisdom as well as a state of profound crisis, which I think is so perfect because, like, you sort of were in crisis, and there was this, the crisis and the wisdom are very connected.
Yes. All of it. All of it was. I mean, I was the one person, like when you hear that the world's going to shut down, I was that person that people were concerned about. You're like, Chad is mentally fragile sometimes, and he doesn't like to be home alone. So it's like I was the one that people would check on, but I kind of knew. I was like, I'm not going to be taken down by this. I was like, I'm not going to be taken down by this. I'm going to fucking fight it. And so I was probably more ready than a lot of people. I was focused. I had a game plan, and it shifted and moved, but I went into it, and so as I did it, starting to realize about the darkness, but then I also, once I was still and could look into that light and could figure it out, I started learning how to properly grieve. And it was such a affirming feeling inside me to not like die from that. Like I'm living my whole life wanting to feel alive, but I'm terrified of grief. So I do some sort of dissociation and only think happy thoughts and never process these certain things. Like one of the pieces that I wrote that's been published, it was about that, and it was a story I've been wanting to write about fifth grade the whole time. And one part of the story, I mean, it's just my own story of fifth grade, but one part was the space shuttle blowing up, and we're kids and watching it, and we're so excited because she's a teacher, and me, my tender, fragile heart watches this thing explode, and I've never thought about it since then. Like I know that happened. I can't ever think about what I might have felt that day, and I've always known that that's what I was running from. But my teacher that year, who was also my favorite teacher, she died of cancer that year, and she was a family friend, and she
Mm.
was my favorite teacher, and I've known this, and that made me sad. And as I was writing the story, I got to the part about her dying, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't talk about things like that when I write because that's sad. So I'm going to end it here." But I looked at it and it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like the story. And I closed my eyes and said, what do I feel when I think about what she was? And, I kind of time traveled back into fifth grade me, 10 years old, and what she meant to me and how she seemed to glow and radiate and how much it hurt me when she died. I mean, tears just coming down my face. Yeah, it had happened, but before the pandemic, I didn't even cry when I was home by myself. Like, out of some image of myself I didn't want to be. Like, I'm not going to be a person that cries and I don't do sad things. Oh fuck, I cry. I cry 100 times a day sometimes. I'm walking down the in the park on my morning walk and some gorgeous song comes on by Arthur Russell or something, and I'm just like, thank God I'm wearing sunglasses because there's just tears streaming down my face, and I feel so alive. Alive wasn't just running and racing and having all this fun. Alive is loving something enough that it's going to break you open when it's over, and you're going to know it, and then you're going to be okay, you know? But maybe not. That's what the darkness in my brain will tell me sometime. It's like, what if though? This is your new theory, but it's only 3 years old. What if one time you break your heart open and you don't ever recover? And I mean, each time I have an actual real time grief that comes up now, I try to experience all the way full, but I can tell it leaves a teeny, teeny bit of scar on me, which I don't like. Like, I want to be all in. I want to be all in for the rest of it. While I'm still around, I want to be all in. And I know that I'm being a little untrue to myself because every real time my heart rips open in two when someone or something I love dies or something like this, I do it. I go for it. I'm like, here I am. Hit me with it. And I do it. And it's great. It's great to experience it, but I can tell that part of me has my guard up now, just a teeny bit. Just a teeny bit that subconsciously I'm probably not gonna fall as hard for the next thing. I'm gonna keep a little bit of myself away. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, but it's some sort of self-preservation rooted in the old part of me. And I can just hope that I can one day figure it out, that it doesn't keep scarring, that maybe it just stops where it is, like just a little bit of a scar, and I can do it. I mean, that's what happened with that. I I could tell right away. I was like, you are trying to make me get so connected to you, and I can't do that. Like the first time I was suicidal was when my dog died. Like 11 years ago. We'd been together 14 years. So he was old. I knew he was going to die soon, but you're just not ready for it. And I wasn't mentally equipped to handle it. And when he died, it just broke me. It broke me, and I couldn't recover. I didn't think I was going to make it. But I did. But then after that, for the next 10 years, I was like, okay, don't ever get too attached to anything because it's not worth it. You're not strong enough. If you get attached and something goes wrong, then you might not make it this time for real. I mean, it's fair. I mean, I was suicidal. I was pet sitting in a farmhouse that was heated by a wood stove as the only heat. And I said, if I closed the flue before I went to bed, the house would just fill with smoke and I wouldn't wake up. Day before Christmas, alone in a farmhouse, right after my dog died. And I was like, thank God. I was like, well, that would be irresponsible to these dogs that these people are paying me to watch. Like, it wasn't my farmhouse. These people were on vacation, Christmas vacation. I was watching their dogs. And I was like, ugh, do I let the dogs out? And I do this? And I was like, no, but then who's going to take care of them for the week until they come back? Thank God. I mean, one of the many, many things that have flashed in front of me that was better to think about, prettier to look at, that always saves me. So the cat came around. I was like, oh, I'm not going to get attached to you. And the first time he ever climbed a tree, he was wild. He came running down. He climbed up this tree and he got stuck high up in this tree, and he's panicked and he's terrified. And I could feel it. A full on panic attack was coming over me because I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
And I had just met the ladies next door to me, and I was like, I am not mentally equipped to handle this situation right now. Can you help me? Because they were cat people. That's all I knew about them. I met them once, and we talked about cats. And we're talking over the fence, and the cat comes racing in between us, stuck up in this tree, and I feel it. I feel my heart doing that thing like it's just gonna explode, and not in a good way. And I can feel a panic attack full on coming on. And I asked these girls if they could help me, and they were like, it's gonna be okay. And it was. And they eventually got out of there, but I was like, oh, okay, that's it then. I'm all in now. I'm all in. Like, I get it. I'm attached to you now. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle. And for one thing, I'm so glad you're still here and treasure
Me
every
too.
day
Me too. Thank you.
you walk this earth. And yeah, like that's the darkness, right? Is like how much pain do I have to feel and how much do I have to lose in life? And like, what if that's bigger than the stuff that feels good and the stuff that makes you want to keep living, you know? And it sounds like you're sort of learning how the two, like, life is just both of those things. And we can't, like grieving something is one of the deepest appreciations we can have for what was here and what we got to experience. And by letting yourself access that, even though it leaves a scar and it makes us afraid, but like, you know, becoming willing to like cry like daily versus never crying
It's
is
crazy. It's straight crazy.
it's so good. It's so healthy and it's so like that's what living really, I think like that's what it requires of us is to feel all of that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a great story how you sort of acquired that for yourself or let that happen for you.
It's fun. It's fun to feel alive in a different way. I just want to feel alive. And a lot of that was from concerts and hot times with ladies and, basketball where my knees still worked. And, it was always like a sort of just a serotonin rush is what the feeling alive was. That's why I can't do cocaine. Um, I want that rush. I want it. I love it. And to add, so I still have that. I'm going, I try to do 3 days on now, 4 days off. And the 3 days that I go out, I'm going faster than I've ever gone. And it's just suck it all up, take in every single thing because these are my days to do it. But then in my downtime, it's nice to just get to be calm and recharge.
Good. Be careful out there. Um, Before we take a little break, will you read a poem?
Oh, yes. Let me find one for you. Flash. On evenings when the weather is nice, we pull the blanket over to the fence and we sit and watch the sky change colors. We count the number of jet streams that we see flying overhead. Some nights we see so many that we lose track. This is the most content I've ever been in my life, I tell him. An entire adulthood spent on the run. I never knew how much I needed a forced downtime. I used to feel so restless it'd feel like my chest was going to explode. The cat nudges my leg and I reach down and scratch his head. There's still some time left. When it's totally dark, we'll stay out a few more minutes together, and then I'll fold up the blanket and head inside, and he'll head back to his own house. See you tomorrow, little, I'll say, and I'll smile, as I do every night when I tell him goodbye. We'll both hope the sun comes up fast in the morning so that we can get outside and do it all over again. Two pink and silver ones cross each other above the giant walnut tree in the yard next door. There's a quick flash as they pass over the disappearing sun. How many is that now? I ask him.
Pardon the interruption. I want to take a moment to let you know about our Typewriter Tarot membership on Patreon. For just $6 a month, you get free seats in all of our classes and workshops. That includes gatherings like Creative Coven, which happens around the Wheel of the Year moments. That's the equinoxes, the solstices, the halfway points in between. And we gather during those times to nourish our creativity in the spirit of the season. We connect with particular tarot archetypes. We pull cards together. We write together. We talk together. Those are part of what you get in the membership, as well as our other workshops. Our next Creative Coven is happening on July 31st. And this one is going to be free and open to everyone. But the next few Creative Covens after that are for members only. You also get the recordings. And in August, I am launching a workshop series on animals of the tarot. So we're going to look at the non-human creatures that show up in the tarot cards from a few different angles. That is included in membership. And you also get access to our wonderful, rich, and ever growing learning library, which contains all of the workshops we've done in the past. That's workshops on the different suits in the tarot and the major arcana. There's a workshop on writing the hard parts, which is about ritual and nervous system regulation if you're writing about difficult subject matter. We've got lots of wonderful stuff in the learning library. And you also get my occasional essays on tarot and magic and nature and spirituality and art and creativity and some of the ways that I experience uh, the spiritual side of my life and how it's woven into just getting through the days, right? It's also a beautiful community of creative spirits and mystical beings that you get to befriend and get to know. And again, you can join our membership and support the work that Typewriter Tarot is doing for as little as $6 a month. If you pay for the year in advance, it's less than $65. There are a few other tiers that get you other wonderful things like a mystic message, that's a tarot card and a poem mailed to your mailbox every month at the start of the month. Um, at the highest tier, you get an hour-long tarot reading with me once a year. So I'd love for you to join the community if you like the conversations you're hearing. If you want to keep studying tarot with my weird ass self, I'd love for you to come hang out. You can find out more at typewritertarot.com/membership. Now we'll get back to the show. That's another thing about the hermit is that I think the lantern is not just for the hermit. It's also like in some medieval tales and folklore, there's a hero on a journey or on a quest or something, and they find the hermit in the woods, and the hermit helps them. The hermit can use their lantern to like help this person continue on their way, or they have some sage advice, they have some wisdom to share. And so it almost seems to me, whether you realized it or not, that in feeling like you were starting to get better, feel better, deal with life in a way that felt more sane or optimistic or just realistic or truthful, that it wasn't like you just wanted it for yourself, you also wanted to transmit that. Your Substack is called Transmissions from the Future. You wanted to transmit that for other people to find, to kind of leave these lanterns wherever you might go.
Ah, I love that. I mean, you set that Substack up for me, and I was excited, and I wanted it to be a sort of showcase of things that I wrote and mixtapes that I made, and maybe some pictures that I took. But also, for sure, I mean, at least 50% of my reason for doing it at the beginning was to try to help people in the pandemic, just to bring them a little moment of joy in their day if they needed it. And I mean, it really made me, I mean, in those early days, I'd put out some really not great pieces of writing, but I just wanted to put it out. I kind of made myself try to put out a couple a month because I wanted people to have that to look forward to. Like maybe they hear a song on it they like, but maybe they read something and it makes them smile. Maybe it makes them think about being a kid. Um, and I was purposely trying to do that. I was trying to put positivity and something that was real, but also a whimsy. Whimsy can be real if you want it. You can sit in your yard all day and look at hummingbirds. I do.
You can do that.
It's fantastic. You can
It
just
is.
do it. I mean, just do it. Who cares? Turn off your phone and just look at the hummingbirds. Oh,
They're amazing.
they are amazing. They're so little and wild. Oh, they're magic.
They are magic. Yes. Um, Talk a little bit about what's happened for you in your like devotion or your commitment to putting out. It's almost like a little digital zine. You even it was surprised me a little bit because you were when we set it up for you, like you're as you told me when we started this call, this is like your second time you've been on Zoom. And you you don't you're not a gadget person, you don't love technology, like you're an Americana, like you're drinking Americana, old-fashioned America from a fire hose some days. And so it surprised me that you really have found this like aesthetic of sometimes you're doing things in the newsletter where I'm like, how did he make it look like that? It looks really good.
Oh,
And
thanks.
it's, like, a little grainy, but it's like you're taking a photo of the poem. Anyway, my question is really, um, what have you, like, discovered about yourself or what's happened for you? What's changed? What's evolved because you continue on with it and you've continued on with it for 3 years?
Yeah, it's sort of shifted um, about what it is for me and what it looks like. Uh, I guess everybody that does this wants to be discovered. Have one famous person tweet about you, and then you'll get hundreds of followers. I was in a story on MSNBC, and I was like, "This is going to be my break. Tomorrow. I'm gonna wake up and have 10,000 new subscribers." And I got four, maybe three. But lately, all of a sudden, and I feel like I'm being more serious about it. I'm trying to make it more compact. I realize that in this modern age, maybe it doesn't need to be this long, rambling thing. People probably aren't going to do that. I like the way it looks, but it's maybe not translating where other people can maybe understand it as much. So I'm now making it more compact, kind of just a couple of poems and stories, one mixtape, a picture, just make it look cool. And so it's been fun. There's been a couple of people have shared it on their Substack, and I've got a lot of new followers from that, which is great. A pop culture blogger who I have followed for 20 years, Whitney Matheson, shared me on her page, and it was just, oh my God. I was right under Pat Smith on her recommendations.
Wow.
Patty Smith,
What?
Transmissions from the Future. I was
Oh
like,
my
oh
god.
my gosh. And then my friend Denise just shared me on hers. She has a new Substack talking about her RV travels and house concerts, and she shared it. And I got a ton of new people from that. And so, with all these new people, um, it makes me want to try harder. It makes me want to put out a better product. Knowing that people have vouched for me, and new people are coming in, and that's been great. And especially lately, it's been great because it gives me a motivation to keep writing, to finish a piece. I have infinity unfinished pieces on notebooks and scrap pieces of paper and 15,000 draft emails to myself. And so to have this Substack makes me harness it. It makes me pull two or three together and finish them and put them into something. And then, um, once they're up there, then I have them in a form and I can see which ones I want for my book that is hopefully coming out in the next, we'll say, year. I'm getting closer than I've ever been, but I
I
say that a lot. But I couldn't ever get it. Everything to me is kind of like a mixtape, and so I couldn't ever keep, you know, 45 poems in my head about what that order would be, how it would look on a giant sized mixtape. I kind of say that I write like a mixtape chat book. It's not really a chat book. So I just gave it this name, but I always kind of see it as that, like one poem sort of flows into this one, flows into this, and a different way of telling a story. And I'm close. I'm getting closer than I've ever been. And so I use the Substack to finish pieces and make them. Sometimes the Substack comes out and I look at it, I'm like, that word there wasn't right. And then I can see it. And, I hate that I didn't get it right that first time when I put it out, but it was close. But then when the book comes out, I'll tighten it if it needed to be tightened. So it's been great. It's been a fantastic evolution for me, all started by you, Cecily. Thank you very
well
much.
started by you
Well,
and
no, started
supported
by you.
supported by me.
Started by you. You went in and you built the whole foundation for me. And we did a Zoom call. Oh, so I've done three now. That was my first Zoom call, was when you showed me how to go into my own Substack and create it. And I was like, ooh, I have all these ideas. And it took me a long time to figure out how to put those ideas into reality, image wise, like so that you looked at it. Cause I want it to look good. I don't want it to be just words. That's
Yeah.
fine. But I like you to have something to look at, something to listen to, maybe something to think about, and then that's it. And it'll come into your inbox once or twice a month, usually. And maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I don't know. I have a fun time doing it. And I'm putting out some wild mixtapes lately. I'm trying to branch out and put those out. I've had some fun people comment on those. It's been really great. So
Yeah, I think it's a feeling, your newsletter. It's like an experience. And I think the mixtape chapbook is a good descriptor for what you're doing. And there's something you've been able to do with the aesthetic that kind of lends it that nostalgic veneer, like as a vibe, not even just what's going on in the poems or the
mm,
music. Um, I love getting your new playlists, and if I'm in the car, I'm like, okay, there's a new there's a new playlist for me. Thank you,
yay.
Hutch. And I do want to talk a little bit about the nostalgia part and what, like, I don't even know exactly what question I want to ask, but it's like, in one sense, holding on to the past is not super helpful sometimes. Like, we definitely need our past to like be integrated into our present self. And it always is helpful, I think, to be like making sense of our experience and what we've lived through so that we can kind of figure out where we want to go. But I guess I'm curious, like, why do you think the nostalgia, what does it feel like for you? Or like, why is it such a big part of your work? Or what's happening for you when you get into some of that stuff that feels nostalgic?
Whew. I've always done it as much as I can remember, as long as I can remember. It's like at the moment something is happening, I'm fully experiencing it, but I'm also like, this is going to be one of those I'm going to think about. It's like stored away. This is it. Like a lot of times while it's happening, I'm like, this is going to be it. Like this will be one of those. And they're always just here. And I don't know. There's some movement going around now. I hear everyone talking about how nostalgia is dangerous. And you
Mm, I didn't know
shouldn't
that.
mess around with it. So I'm going to be the spokesperson against that, except I get why people say it. Nostalgia is dangerous if you are unable to be content. If
Mm,
you're a person that is struggling to be happy and you're spending all of your time in a nostalgic world, that's not healthy then probably because you're not doing something here in the moment. I don't know that it's right, but I'm splitting it right down the middle, both at the same time. Sometimes nostalgia's on the left and present's on the right, and sometimes present is on the left and nostalgia's on the right. But it's 50-50 always. I'm here, I'm in a moment, and I can remember, I'll think back fondly on a time when something felt great and I liked how it felt and I can go there. You can go there for a little bit of time and you come back and I mean, it's sort of like being present, except you're present in another time. So like if you're time traveling to the past
yeah.
and you're from the future,
Yes.
like that there it is. And so I do it and I live there for a minute and sometimes I'll come out of it if I'm having a really, really beautiful one, a really beautiful nostalgic moment. And there's been times when I was thinking of someone that I loved and something I did with them who's not here anymore, and I come out of it and I forget for a minute that they're not there. Like that I want to call up a friend and be like, "Hey, I was just talking to Lester." And I was like, "Shit." I mean, I haven't talked to him in years now. But for a minute I can be there and I can remember exactly what it was and how it felt and what it looked like and I'm there and I don't think that's dangerous. I love it. And I don't spend all of my time there. I try as hard as I can to be present. But if my mind wants to think about something nice like this, why in the fuck am I not going to? I mean, there's people that I really admire for their way that they live their life, and they've shared online that this nostalgia is dangerous,
Mm,
because it wasn't actually as bright as you think it is their argument, people's argument. Like when you're nostalgic, you're looking at this thing and saying, oh, this was the best. But also, maybe you were insecure then too. But you're forgetting all of this. So you're looking at it as some glorified picture. Yeah, so what? I don't care. But if you're having a problem being happy in the present and you're comparing it to a maybe made up time. I'm not having a problem being happy in the present. And I like to think about other things that I did that made me happy when I was younger. Hmm, that's it. Like, so there's so much of that I feel like you lose, especially in this day and age of Instagram and videos and TikTok. I don't even know how to use TikTok. Um, but all of this stuff, you're just bombarded and you forget what things used to feel like and what things used to mean when things used to be real, when it was something different. I think it's good to go back and remember what that felt like instead of just continuing on this trend where, would you like AI to write this email to your friend for you? Fuck no, I wouldn't. Like, no, I don't want to. I want to have an actual connection with actual people. And some days I don't want to talk to anybody. Those days are just for me. But when I get out and I want to have connections, I want to have them. And even days that are just for me, that's kind of why I love going on my walk in the morning. I get to wave at all these people. There's a couple dogs that walk around, and I know the dogs' names, but not the owners' names. And I pet them, and the dogs are excited to see me. And I ask the owner about the weather or something, but we'll never know each other's names. But I know their dogs, and it's just I have this moment where I still have a real connection, a real a real thing when something's real. It's not. I don't know. I can't. It drives me crazy.
uh, Listening to you talk about it, what it sounds like is I love what you said, like the word remembering. And it also sounds like this savoring of like
Savoring.
kind of pulling more out of life than just even it gave you in the present moment. And yeah, a little bit of time traveling, like you get to actually have some freedom or agency over connecting with someone who isn't like physically here anymore. You get to kind of be next to them a little bit in a way. And I think that is healthy. I don't think that's delusional the way that you're talking about it. And I think there's something really valuable, like you were saying, in, as we get more and more caught up in technology, and it seems like the direction is that people have their days like stuffed full with so much shit, whether it's email, the scrolling, the actual, like all the passwords you have to like all the things that give you access to like whatever, whether it's streaming or like keeping track of your money or
To something on a
whatever.
screen, to something on a screen, not
Mhm.
something in the real world.
Yeah.
It's all access to something on most likely a screen that you're holding in your hand. I mean, I love it. I like to look at pretty pictures, but mostly I like to listen to music, like I do love to listen to music on my phone. But
Yeah.
yes, it is that. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, all those passwords. That's it. You're bombarded with it all day long. Mm. So it's nice to remember, and not all nostalgia is times when it wasn't. I mean, some nostalgia might be from fucking yesterday, but
Right.
a lot
The
of nostalgia, a lot
2000s.
of, yeah, that's right. But a lot of nostalgia, some of it's when I was a kid, and like, and thinking about these people that I loved that had an impact on me and that had power. And now when I get to go back and think about them, I can take that. I can take that. Like, what was it that made these people magical? What was it that did this? They're not here, but how can I take that thing that me and them had together and bring it to a present tense?
Mm,
Take it, put it out into the world. What all these people, what they meant to me, and what they were, and they were all these really magical, wonderful people that I've had the pleasure of knowing who are not here anymore. I can get quiet and calm in the yard, and I can, watch the sky changing colors, and all of a sudden I start thinking about somebody, and next thing I know, it's just like it was still there. It's kind of beautiful. And if you do it all the time, sure, like anything, like that's dangerous. But it's not. I don't think it's dangerous to let your mind remember times that were pleasant and nice.
yeah.
Just don't use it necessarily to judge against your current level of happiness,
Yeah.
but you can use it as a reminder of, maybe there was something you liked better about that version of yourself that you forgot about until now. And when you're going back, you're like, oh, what I liked about me there was I did this. And I was like, oh, why don't I do that anymore now? You
Yeah.
know?
There's some guidance in the past. Like if we keep living like this and find ourselves unhappy or strangely dissatisfied, there might be clues back in the day to like what was fulfilling and what we needed and what helped us feel connected. And you touched on something else that I think has been important in this journey for you. And like picking up this the poet self that you have, and also this willingness to kind of sit with your own experience, is that you've created, I think it seems to me, a kind of spiritual sensibility that like doesn't exist in a religious institution but is feels true for you. Like there's some sort of spiritual sensibility that can guide you or help you feel like when that dark voice comes in to be like, what's the point? There's some kind of spiritual core you have that works for you that can sort of keep the lights on, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. I purposely, I knew when a week into the pandemic, I'm like, when I come out of this, this is going to be like version number 7 or 8 or me that's going to come out of it. I knew that was going to be somebody different. I was going to be purposeful about it, um, and so I was like, well, what is this going to be? What's going to be my foundation? What's going to be, what's my code? How am I going to find a way in all of this? And I purposely avoided reading any sort of, there's philosophers that I like Alan Watts and things like that, but I purposely didn't read his stuff. Like I knew who he was, but I didn't read it. I wanted to form my own opinions and come up with my own plan. And then once I had that, compare it to what people who are probably smarter than me said, and get some wisdom from that. But so I started doing this, and then I started reading some things, and I told a good friend of mine in town, I was like, am I maybe a Buddhist and didn't know it? And he was like, of course you're a Buddhist. I've never studied it. I'm not really. I don't. The most layman's Buddhist, if at all. I don't read any of it particularly. I'm intrigued by it. I love it. I'm reading a book now called The Dalai Lama's Cat, and it's
Perfect.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, it's really great. It's a novel. It's really fantastic. Um, but I did. So I come up with this way of something, and that's it. Like when it's dark, you have these things that you rely on. I rely on. I did. I built it up, and some of it's ridiculous what it's based on, but it's a lot of Mary Oliver, and it's a lot of Jerry Jeff Walker, and it's a lot of Tom T. Hall and John Prime, and then it's this stillness, this thing that's kind of like Mary Oliver helped teach me that. Right after I discovered Richard Brodigan, I discovered Mary Oliver like 2 days later in the pandemic, and I'm like, what? Like Mary Oliver, A Summer Day, is that the one that's like, what are you doing with your one precious life? I was
Yeah.
like, what? I was like, what is this? What is this about? And I was like, I want to inhale this. And fortunately for me, in the pandemic, I found this live stream called the Seventh Inning Stretch with Josh Cantor, who's the Boston Red Sox organist,
Hmm.
and his wife, Reverend Producer Mary. And since the baseball was canceled, they just turned on their live stream on the first day that was supposed to be opening season of baseball. And he just kind of took requests. You would type in requests, and he would play them on his organ at the house. And it was wild and absurd. And they said they were just going to do it every day until baseball came back. And so every day at 3 o'clock, I watched this live stream, and it turned into this really wonderful community and this outlet of positivity and just talking. They would have real talks about things, like the stress and everything that was happening, and they'd acknowledge it. And just the way that they went about portraying this sense of like optimism while also saying things that are true, while also acknowledging things that are true and choosing to choose happiness. Choosing it. You don't just get to have it. It'd be nice. Maybe some people do. I mean, wouldn't that be great? You choose it. You choose it and you fight for it and you make that what you do, and you choose to be positive and real and try to be kind. Fuck. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. And these people came on for 120 days in a row in the pandemic, and I became some sort of, they would talk to me on the show, Chad H calling in from outer space, they would say sometimes. It was really sweet. And then they filmed a South by Southwest episode 2 years ago, and they invited me to come in and do a quick cameo on there. And I just couldn't believe it. These people that really helped me kind of formulate a plan for how I was going to what version number 8 of Chad Hutchinson was going to be. Give it, maybe it's 7, maybe it's 9. I don't know. There's been at least 6 or 7 times where I reinvented myself because I didn't like the person that I was at the moment and I wanted to be someone different. Um, and these people helped me do that. They were part of whatever my religion is. Uh, it's not it's not any sort of Christianity church thing, that's for sure. But it's a spiritual thing. Um, you know, Towns Van Zant lyrics, Guy Clark lyrics, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, King Kesey, Augustus McCrae, these little bits of wisdom from these people that I always, it's like, oh, I love this line, I love this song. You can kind of study it. And this is it. That's my new religion. That's how I get by. And
Well, it
say hi
looks
to
good on
puppies.
you. Yes. Talk to dogs.
Thanks, Cecily. Say hi to all dogs.
You befriended a squirrel as well. A goal that I've had as a person who feeds squirrels, who's been feeding squirrels longer than you have, I think, but I came to your place and the squirrel's just like all about you. And I was like, what am I doing
That was
wrong?
that was a really wild time. I mean, he would come down and I'd feed him from my hand and he would sit on the chair next to me.
Yes.
And like on the hot days, a friend of mine who's a big squirrel person, she said it's called pancaking when they
Yeah,
lay
they do
out real
that.
flat like that. But he
Yeah.
would lay, I mean, literally right next to me. And I never knew if we were actually friends or if he was just using me for the peanuts. Um, and at
No,
the
they
end, it
will.
got to be just about the peanuts. At the end, it got to be just about the peanuts. But for a little bit,
Mm,
I think we were kind of friends. My nephew was like, "Have you touched him yet?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "When are you going to touch him?" I was like, "When he wants me to." You
very,
know,
very smart.
one time I was like, "Do you want me to touch you?" And I touched his tail, and he was like, "Do not ever do that again." Like he spun around, and I was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "I'm so sorry about that." It was very light, but he was like, "Whoa!" and spun, and I was like, "Oh." But then he got a little, yeah. I think at the end he just wanted the peanuts, so I released him to the wild.
Well, they can use you for your peanuts without ever pretending to be your friend. So
Oh,
I think you had something real there.
I I mean, I think it was. I mean, we hung out. I mean, it was after the cat was gone, and then suddenly there was a squirrel. And for real, this is a true thing. It sounds insane, but it's true. There would often be times where I would be writing a story about the cat, and I would get done with a piece. I would writing it on my phone out in the yard, and I would look up, and the squirrel would have materialized. He would be sitting there patiently, waiting for me to acknowledge him.
Wow.
Every time I wrote a story about the cat, I'd look up and there's that squirrel, and I was like, "Well, hello there." It was weird times, those pandemic days.
It's like Walden Pond over there.
I'm glad
Um,
you got to see it. I forgot that you got to see him.
I did. I loved it, and I also want to shout myself out for bringing you a bunch of bird food and bird feeders to help you
I
um,
know that really
cultivate your
that got me
habitat.
hooked on. I loved it. It made me anxious when you
Yes.
gave me the bird feeders because I thought that was too big of a commitment. I'm not good at really committing to much except just being me. But I'm trying. And I realized that if it turned out to be too much, my fear was I would put it out, and then one day there would be 502 birds in the yard
Yeah.
demanding more food, and that made me
Mm,
anxious.
okay. Yeah, you looked
And
anxious when I brought it to you, and I was
I was
like, "Oh
so
shit."
anxious. I was so anxious, but it ended up being really fun. I had a best time with it. I had some bluebirds. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Oh, they were just so gorgeous. And a nice cardinal couple that has been in the yard for years. Some purple finches or maybe house
Yes.
finch. I don't know how
Mhm.
you ever tell the difference. Um, but they're just gorgeous. That red color.
Yeah.
I got a bird bath and put it out. I have to
Ooh,
move stuff around. I have to move stuff around when the hummingbirds come because they don't like all the other birds in the yard,
okay.
like attacking them. But
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out a solution. But
Well, good. Um, Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your work and your journey and your spiritual discoveries and your quasi hermit life. We didn't get very much into your live music addiction, but I think it's
Uh,
come up. I hope it's been
uh-huh.
addressed. And I hope folks will sign up for your Substack, which you can find at futureman.substack.com. And there you will get Chad's poems, you will get his wonderful playlists and some great old photographs. I love seeing you when you were um, a teenager, a kid, an earlier version of yourself. And yeah, it's a delight. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Cecily. This was a blast.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this exploration of the hermit has given you a little bit of inspiration and guidance and wisdom on how you might want to bring a little more hermit energy into your own life. And I support and celebrate whatever discoveries you find inside yourself when you get a little bit more stillness, a little bit more alone time. I'm really grateful to Chad for coming on the show, and I hope that you will check out his Substack, which you can find again at futureman.substack.com. Thanks again for listening. It means a lot that you're here. If you want to find out what else is going on with Typewriter Tarot and my work, I encourage you to go to typewritertarot.com and sign up for the email newsletter. I don't email too much, and I make sure you get the news you need. See you next time and enjoy your creative and magical life.